If you wanted to support an organization that might be the most effective at pulling us back from the brink of extinction, what would you choose? That is the question 2 Canadians have been asking, and we would like to share our answer with you.
My name is Phil Gregory. I'm a professor emeritus of physics and astronomy at the University of British Columbia. For the past 7 years, I have been focusing on the changes required to sustain human life on our planet Earth. The answer I arrived at is regenerative agriculture, which is the subject of my new book, Pathway to Regeneration. Regenerative agriculture is all about working with the complex biological systems that nature employs to grow plants and animals. All of nature's creatures evolved to play an important role in an amazing web of life. For example, healthy soil is teeming with invisible life in the form of an immense diversity of microbes. These microbes partner with plants and animals to create fertile soil, sequester atmospheric carbon, store and purify water, and supply nutrients to a diversity of plant matter that help to control atmospheric temperature and rainfall. Regenerative agriculture is all about cooperating with the intelligence of nature to rapidly restore the vast tracts of degraded farmland and ranchland that we have created through unsustainable agricultural practices.
Here is a short NASA video that provides a starting point for our reasoning.
Hi, this is Bill Putman. I'm a climate scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. What you're looking at is a supercomputer model of carbon dioxide levels in the Earth's atmosphere. The visualization compresses 1 year of data into a few minutes. Carbon dioxide is the most important greenhouse gas affected by human activity. In the Northern Hemisphere, we see the highest concentrations are focused around major emission sources over North America, Europe, and Asia. During spring and summer in the Northern Hemisphere, plants absorb a substantial amount of carbon dioxide through photosynthesis, thus removing some of the gas from the atmosphere. We see this change in the model as the red and purple colors start to fade.
Here we see the changes in atmospheric CO2 over the 2-year period ending in February 2022, measured from the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. You can clearly see the yearly cycle of the CO2 level. During the growing season in the Northern Hemisphere, photosynthesis by plants draw down CO2 levels. Added to this annual cycle are continuous emissions resulting from our use of fossil fuels, which amount to an increase of approximately 2 parts per million in CO2 levels in the last year. To stop the annual increase of CO2, we need to greatly reduce our use of fossil fuels and globally increase photosynthesizing vegetation of all kinds to draw down more CO2 during the growing season. Over the last 64 years, the CO2 levels have increased from 315 parts per million to 419 parts per million. We would like to get back to 350 parts per million. This is going to require that we greatly reduce our use of fossil fuels and increase photosynthesizing vegetation to draw down more atmospheric CO2. Carbon is not our enemy. All life is carbon-based. It's a matter of balance. We are currently putting too much carbon into the atmosphere, giving rise to too much global warming. About 40% of that excess atmospheric carbon is being absorbed by the oceans, causing them to acidify, negatively impacting ocean life. We need less carbon in the atmosphere and oceans and more carbon returned to the soil. More carbon in the soil is a great benefit for plants of all kinds, and increased vegetation will keep our planet cooler until we can reduce atmospheric greenhouse gases to a safer level. In a 2013 TED Talk, African ecologist Alan Savory offered a fascinating idea to reclaim degraded land, using livestock to mimic the behavior of wild herds that used to roam these lands. Why this is important is indicated by this NASA image.
The areas in brown are dryland regions that were once thriving grasslands and forests that through mismanagement by humans are turning or have turned to desert.
Savory estimates they represent about 2/3 of the Earth's land area. From space, it appears that humans are transforming a Garden of Eden into a Martian landscape. Wait a minute, what about the methane greenhouse gas emissions from the ruminants? But we have been ignoring a whole other side to this story. As we will show, when ruminants like cattle are grazed to emulate nature, there's a net reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. These native grasslands co-evolved with vast herds of herbivores, like bison in North America, and wildebeest in Africa, that are concentrated into tight herds by their ferocious predators. These grasses evolved to be eaten by herbivores at the end of the grass's life cycle, fertilized by the animal dung and urine, and supported by an amazing complexity of soil microbes and many other creatures, including dung beetles. The herd must keep moving to avoid eating their own waste, so don't get to eat the grass a second time before it regrows. By the time the herd returns from their migration, the grass is fully grown and ready to be eaten. So timing is the key. The migration timing of the herbivores allows the grasses to regrow. Without the herds of herbivores to eat them, the grasses only slowly oxidize or are cleared by burning. According to Savory, about 1 billion hectares are burned each year in Africa, leading to higher levels of greenhouse gases. It is not practical today to create these vast wild herds, but it is possible to imitate nature in how we manage livestock. Here is a Saskatchewan example using portable electric fencing to bunch the livestock into a herd. The herd is only allowed to remain in this paddock for typically a day, so there's no chance to eat any grass a second time as it starts to regrow. In this image, the cattle are bunched together at one end, eager to move to the new paddock. Here is former Saskatchewan rancher Neil Dennis spending 20 minutes setting up an electric fence for the next paddock. As Alan Savory explains, it is not the number of animals that leads to overgrazing and land desertification. It's our failure to manage plant recovery time. This slide provides the details that are based on the shape of the grass growth curve. In the baby phase on the left, the grass grows very slowly. In the middle teenage phase, it grows rapidly, after which it matures, stops growing, and needs to be eaten. By spending more time in the rapid growth phase, much more forage is produced, supporting a larger herd. Managing for plant recovery time using Savory's holistic plan grazing can increase plant forage by a factor of 3 to 4 times, leading to an increase in meat production and farm profitability. Savory's holistic plan grazing has succeeded in regenerating some of the most degraded environments on the planet. The need to work with nature's complex systems led Savory to develop holistic management. This is a process of decision-making and planning that gives people the insights and management tools needed to work with nature. It results in better and more informed decisions that balance key social, environmental, and financial considerations. Although holistic management emerged from the need to manage livestock, it is a tool for managing complexity in all walks of life. It is now apparent that almost all of the existential threats humans currently face are unintended consequences of human mismanagement of our tools and technology. We like to blame livestock, coal, oil, and gas for climate change. But these resources are not the problem. It is our management of these resources that is the problem. According to physicist Thomas Kuhn, author of The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, a paradigm shift does not occur easily. It can be threatening to entrenched beliefs, evoking ridicule and opposition, until eventually it is widely accepted as self-evident. The world is slowly waking up to the need for holistic management to deal with the complexity of balancing social, environmental, and financial considerations that truly let us partner with nature. The Savory Institute was created in 2009 with a mission to promote the restoration of the world's grasslands through holistic management. It is the only organization that uses a large-scale approach of properly managed livestock to tackle desertification and other associated global issues like climate change and food security. The principal way they achieve their mission is through the creation of a global network of training hubs that empower farmers, ranchers, and land managers to heal their own land. It's a decentralized and regenerative organizational culture with an ability to replicate at scale. It employs Savory's expertise in holistic management, a professional network of hubs and accredited professionals, and programs like ecological outcome verification and land to market to enable systemic transformation on a global scale. In 2015, Michigan State University was the first university to be recognized as a Savory hub. The Savory Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit organization which now spans the world with a network of 50 training hubs. According to their impact report of 2020-21, they had trained over 14,000 land managers and influenced nearly 16 million hectares of land. Today, this number has increased to 21 million hectares. In the decades prior to the formation of the Savory Institute, Alan Savory's holistic management had already influenced 16 million hectares of land, bringing the total to 37 million hectares. The Institute's current goal is to increase the number of training hubs from approximately 50 in 2020 to 100 hubs. This will facilitate the adoption of regenerative grazing on approximately 1 billion hectares of grazing land. To put this in perspective, worldwide there are a total of 5 billion hectares of land used for agriculture, 3.5 billion for grazing, and 1.5 billion for growing crops. The Savory Institute is ambitiously poised to leap from influencing 37 million hectares to approximately 1/3 of all grazing land. White Oak Pastures, located in Bluffton, Georgia, is an example of a Savory hub. It is a 3,200-acre, 152-year-old family farm that transitioned from a conventional farm operation in 1995 to a grass-fed, holistically planned grazing operation. Before the change, Will Harris had 4 employees making minimum wage, and his margins were getting thinner every year. Now the farm employs 165 people that make double the county average. He has taken a town on the brink of collapse and turned it into a thriving ecosystem. White Oak Pastures is now recognized as a leader in regenerative farming. General Mills, one of White Oak Pastures' customers, became concerned about the carbon footprint claims that were leveled against regenerative land management by a competitor. General Mills funded an $80,000 life cycle assessment of the carbon footprint of the holistic planned cattle grazing at White Oak Pastures. They hired the environmental engineering company Qantas, the same one used by their competitor. The results of the life cycle analysis are shown by the bars in this chart. Bars that are above the horizontal gray line are emissions of greenhouse gases and are labeled with a positive number. The first of these, at plus 29, is the emission of methane from the cattle. The numbers indicate the greenhouse gas emission in kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilogram of beef produced. The next bar, at plus 5, is from methane and nitrous oxide emission from the animal manure. There are 2 other smaller contributions arising from other farm activities and animal slaughter and transportation. Below the horizontal gray line, the bars have negative numbers because they represent carbon removed from the atmosphere. When all the positive and negative bars are added, the result is the total net emission shown on the right, coming in at negative 3.5 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilogram of beef produced. This result indicates one of the ways that regenerative grazing can have a beneficial effect on the climate. Qantas also provided a comparison of the greenhouse gas emissions for a variety of products, including conventional beef, pork, chicken, Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger, soybean, and finally White Oak Pastures beef, coming in at negative 3.5. So yes, the cow is not the problem. When it comes to climate change, it is how we manage them. Under holistic management, livestock are a powerful asset in dealing with both climate change and reversing desertification. Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger are both plant-based burgers. So whether you choose to eat meat or not, ruminants like the cow evolved to play an important role in maintaining the health of the world's grasslands. Managed properly, ruminants are essential for reversing desertification and cooling our planet on the majority of the world's agricultural land. Here are some of the peer-reviewed results providing evidence that regenerative grazing can sequester significant amounts of atmospheric carbon. The numbers are measurements of the annual tons of carbon that were removed from the atmosphere and stored in each hectare of farmland. Regenerative agricultural practices, both for grazing ruminants and growing crops, can restore degraded land and sequester atmospheric carbon in the soil. The amounts shown here for regenerative grazing range from 2 to 8 tons of carbon per hectare per year. Similar results have been achieved with regenerative cropping systems. In both cases, the reasons for these large carbon sequestration rates is believed to be due to the restoration of ecosystem function, which is mediated by soil microbes, with a mutual dependency among microbes, plants, and animals. How significant is this? What if we practice regenerative agriculture on all of the world's agricultural land, all 5 billion hectares? For this rough estimate, we will assume a carbon sequestration rate of 3 tons of carbon sequestered per year on each hectare of land. Multiplying this by 5 billion hectares gives an answer of 15 billion tons of carbon sequestered per year. This corresponds to the removal of 55 billion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere each year. For 2019, the total greenhouse gas emissions from all sources was estimated to be 58 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. We would be very close to being carbon neutral. But to have any chance at stopping the global warming, we need to significantly reduce atmospheric carbon levels, which means we have to rapidly reduce our fossil fuel emissions as well. The combination of reducing fossil fuel emissions combined with regenerative agriculture offers a potential path forward for humanity. Finally, this image shows changes in soil organic matter on 6 regenerative grazing farms in 6 different states, measured by Dr. Alan Williams of Grass-Fed Insights. AMP grazing stands for Adaptive Multi-Paddock Grazing. It is a frequently used term to convey an initial appreciation of holistic plan grazing. Notice the steady annual increase in soil organic matter over the 5-year period. This corresponds to an average increase in soil carbon in the range from 0.17% to 0.42%, which is really excellent. In many ways, the carbon sequestration is the icing on the cake when you consider the many co-benefits that flow from regenerative agriculture. The restoration of our soils and rangelands using nature's biological systems is changing the whole paradigm of how we can grow food on this planet that is both ecologically beneficial and more profitable to the farmers and their communities. This slide illustrates the level of donation income that has allowed the Savory Global Network to achieve their impressive results to date. What might it cost to scale this up to influence the entire 3.5 billion hectares of the world's grazing land? To help answer questions like this, the Savory Institute makes use of the diffusion of innovation theory pioneered by Professor Everett Rogers. This theory explains how and why new ideas, including technology, spread. It is considered one of the oldest theories in social science. His book, Diffusion of Innovations, published in 1962, is now in its 5th edition. Diffusion is the process by which an innovation is communicated to the members of a social system over time. The theory includes the notion of a critical mass or tipping point, after which ultimately the total diffusion of an innovation is likely. The tipping point is reached when 15 to 18% of the members adopt the idea. To reach the 18% tipping point for the adoption of regenerative grazing on all 3.5 billion hectares will require its adoption on an additional 593 million hectares. According to their website, a $30 donation allows the Savory Global Network to influence 100 acres of land as the regional hubs train farmers, ranchers, and pastoralists to regeneratively graze their own land. At that rate, 440 million in donations would be required to reach the tipping point, making the widespread adoption of regenerative grazing likely. This is approximately the cost of one new 747 aircraft. which is a small price to pay for such a global reversal of soil degradation and associated soil carbon sequestration. An important first step towards realizing this goal is to complete the innovators portion, which would cost approximately $37 million. Meet our other team member, Brian Silver, who is a sustainable home designer and builder. Brian was inspired by Alan Savory's work to start a fundraising effort to bring about regenerative change. After a mutual friend introduced us, it was a small step from my earlier video, The Magic of Soil, to join this fundraising effort. Here is Brian's message.
Thank you, Phil, for compiling the case for supporting the Savory Institute. Hi, I'm Brian Silver, and I want to speak to you about possibility and responsibility. Many of us have watched, waited, and hoped to see policy changes in our governments that will lead us to a more sustainable future for decades. Those changes have been few and far between, which begs the question, what if we all choose to be responsible for creating this change? None of us are victims in this issue. We are all the cause of what we are experiencing. So, do we want to experience a future of starvation and chaos for our children and grandchildren? Or do we want to band together around the common cause of our survival to take advantage of what regenerative agriculture has to offer, which sequesters atmospheric carbon in the soil and feeds the world without depending on fossil fuels? The Savory Institute offers a scalable regenerative solution for 70% of the world's agricultural land that is devoted to animal grazing. Regenerative grazing practices can also greatly increase the vegetation of the world's grasslands to reverse desertification and provide further cooling of the planet. If we work to rapidly reduce fossil fuel emissions and move to regenerative agriculture at the same time, then we have the possibility of not only saving our children and grandchildren from starvation, but also transforming our world back into a Garden of Eden. Imagine if 20 million people donated $50 to the Savory Institute. We would raise $1 billion. This shows how powerful we are collectively and how easily we can affect change in our world. Whatever you can afford to donate, together we can make a real difference. So, are you poised to leap? Here is our fundraising goal. $440 million to facilitate a global adoption of regenerative grazing. If the arguments we have made resonate with you, and you would like more information about the Savory Institute and how to donate, here is the link to their website. Both Phil and I are regular donors to the Savory Institute, but have no other financial ties with the organization. We are, however, passionate about the work they do and are persuaded that they are the most effective organization to support to help pull humanity back from the brink.